Hello and welcome to another EDH deck design video. This is a recording of my Jeleva deck. The original deck I had posted when I first started with the idea, and I did a recording to improve the quality. Since then, a few months ago, essentially the deck's been altogether, I've just been very slowly improving it. Quite a few number of the spells that were originally in the deck have been replaced. I'm also playing with a few different lands. So I thought I'd go ahead and re-upload a new video of what the current state of the deck is. So what Jeleva is, I'm not going to go through like everything I did last time with her history and whatnot, but she's a very fun general. She is a general that tends to get you either some really good hate or just immediately get tucked. She is a 4 mana costing 1 Grixis, so 1 blue, black, red, for a 1/3 flyer. When she enters the battlefield, each player exiles the top X cards off their deck, where X is the amount of mana I spend on her. So she will first enter and I'll get 4. If she dies, I will get 6 because I'm paying 6. If people have effects that make creatures cost less to cast, that will be however much less. The fun thing is when she is declared as an attacker, I get to cast one of the instances or sorceries for free. And that doesn't restrict me to the color of the mana, it's literally just a free spell. She's really fun. There's a new card that came out, whatever that Narset thing is, that's a lot better than what she does, because Jeleva requires an entry. So if she ever gets bounced or flickered, I lose the cards. A Narset, although she just has to be declared as an attacker, also it doesn't restrict to just instances or sorceries. It's anything from that person's deck. So they're kind of on the same par for what the decks want to do. Being that Narset costs a bunch. She's like 6 or 7. So she's really expensive to cast. Essentially those decks tend to be just loaded with mana rocks, which means they're a little bit susceptible. Jeleva here is also loaded with mana rocks too, but she's just no matter what going to come out faster. The restriction of just instances or sorcery though does mean this is a very fine-tuned deck. Not a lot of permanents at all. In fact, I don't like telling the opponents this, but Jeleva is the only creature in the deck. Let's go ahead and set her over here, and I'm going to run through the deck again. I'm not going to bother with what's changed, I'm just going to show you what's currently in here. So there is these are all spells. Jeleva herself, in this deck, this entire stack is spells. Everything that she exiles, I wanted pure value of. So if I exile a land or an enchantment or artifact or creature, I can't cast that, I lose it. So I wanted to have as many targets as possible with Jeleva. There's lots of tutors in the deck, because with Jeleva, I like to put specific spells on top to either get them under Jeleva, or perhaps there's a spell that I need in my hand, or something like that. So there's a lot of tutors in the deck. Personal Tutor and Mystical Tutor do the same thing. They put a spell on top of my deck. This one is instant speed, so I can do it in someone's turn, but they're also very cheap. So for 1 blue, I can just guarantee whatever I want under Jeleva. Tutor does, or Vampire Tutor does as well. Hits anything, not just spells though. It will most likely be a spell. Demonic Tutor puts it to hand. Long-term plans is fun because it works with her very well. I can put it a few cards deep. And again, it's an instant, so I can do it in someone's turn. Now this means I can do it someone's turn, and then I will be able to cast Jeleva that turn without losing my top deck draw. These guys, although, if I do it at the end of someone's turn, and that means I'm going to draw the card. I mean, that could be good if I'm going to Miracle. There's the Miracle, take an extra turn in here. But it's all situational, really. Diabolic Tutor is a very expensive tutor. It's the average tutor, but in this deck I think it's expensive. But since I can cast it for free off her, it's okay. Same thing with Increasing Ambition. Brainstorm is a fantastic card in this deck because I can put something from my hand on top of my deck. If I accidentally draw something that I need under Jeleva, then I can just put it right back on top. Ponder is kind of the same. It just allows me to actually manipulate a little bit of the top of the deck before I cast or draw. I also have a reshuffle effect here if need be. And then I have some good draw spells like the Factor Fiction and Steam Augury. Essentially just peeling 5 cards off the top of the deck and maybe getting a few. Tidings is a strict draw 4. Again, this is something that's always good off her. You don't want to put like Blue Sun Zenith in there because you can't cast X spells off Jeleva. X will always be 0. And then we have lots of removal and answers to keep Jeleva alive. Crow's Charm is just an all-around good card. Rift, although I cannot cast Overload off of Jeleva, alternate costs, like a flashback, something like that I can't not do. But a Rift, is just such a powerful card anyways. Same thing, Evacuation. If I need to reset what's on Jeleva, I can just cast this and bounce everything. If you saw my previous video, you know I'm not too fond of Devastation Tide. I have lots of Artifact Accelerant in this deck, so bouncing all that to my hand is not really going to be an efficient way of recasting Jeleva. But this is really good at stopping someone else's explosive start, because it sometimes is just necessary. Washout is good, just another way of bouncing. Again, I don't mind bouncing Jeleva to my hand sometimes. There is only one counterspell in the whole deck. Essentially, again, that's this whole stack. I wanted to be able to essentially cast anything from Jeleva. So this is the only counterspell in the deck because the other modes I can still cast off Jeleva. Monomania, I was thinking about replacing this with Amnesia, that Legends card that does just essentially better in mono blue. But I actually really like this artwork on this. The better card is Amnesia since I'm in the colors already. But I honestly can't remember if someone gave this to me, but there's some specific reason. I just feel like I cannot get rid of this particular card. I don't know. Hatred is a great card to tutor to hand for. If there's a tutor to hand spell under Jeleva when I swing with her, and I'm only against one opponent, I will most likely get this, because this allows me to immediately pump her if she's not declared as a blocker, or no creatures declared to block her. Don't do that in multiplayer though, because you'll probably die. Reversal of Fortune is a card I know someone gave to me. I'm using this in the deck specifically because someone gave it to me. The idea behind a lot of the spells coming up is for me to play this stuff out of your deck. If you did not see my previous video, you might not realize this entire deck coming up is essentially an exile themed deck, where I don't mind killing or recasting Jeleva to keep burning off everyone's deck. But there's a huge complement of cards coming up here that is me playing stuff out of your deck. This specific spell is very overcosted. This is one of the first times they started doing this kind of effect, so they were probably not too sure how balanced to cast it, but it's a 6 mana sorcery spell where I may choose an instance of sorcery from someone's hand and copy that spell. To give you an idea of how underwhelming this is nowadays, there is a card, the Vishino guy, that does the same thing, and he's a permanent and he costs less. This is just it kind of fits the theme of the deck, and someone gave this to me, so it's got a place here. But casting an instance of sorcery from someone else's hand, it does kind of complete the theme. Because this one lets me get a creature from them milling. This one lets me get a spell from their deck. Essentially, this is infinitely better than Reversal of Fortunes. For 1 less mana in the exact same set, I get to cast something from their deck. That's a lot more of a selection than 7 cards. This one lets me get... Oh, I'm sorry, I got that wrong. This is the one that gets me the artifact. This is the one that also lets me cast a spell from someone's deck. And it actually costs 1 more, but it has a prowl trigger. But again, all these I'm casting from her for free. And then this one lets me cast something from their graveyard. And this one lets me cast a creature from their deck. And this one lets me just take something from them that's on their board of the table. So, there's a clone of it. All these spells here, there's one... How many is this really? There's so many, essentially just take your deck, play your deck kind of spells. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, I guess 8. Well, 9. Yeah, there's 9 spells in the deck that essentially just dick around with your deck. Actually, there's another one coming up, because I know there is a... Yeah, anyways, Rites of Replication is usually just a win more card. I can cast Kicker from Jeleva. You can also cast Buyback. There was a Capsize in this deck for a little bit there, but it kind of got to the point where I did not really need Capsize, and I would have a lot more things I'd rather be doing with that mana. But Rites of Replication is just usually a win card. Then we have some board wipe effects. Barter in Blood is there to... Again, I don't mind sacking Jeleva. She's the only creature I have, so I really don't care if she dies. Especially if I want to burn off more cards of everyone's deck, so I don't have any fun spells under her. Then we just have some more wipes. Damnation to kill them all. Toxic Deluge is a great spell. And Decree is there to draw me lots of cards. And again, I think I have a total of 2 enchantments, and then there's Jeleva. So out of the 100 cards here, there are 3 targets that this is going to kill on my side. Then we usually good Grixis win more card is Cruel Ultimatum. I will not be getting a creature back from my graveyard, obviously. Like, I guess I could sack her for some mana and do this, but that's not happened yet. Curse of the Cabal is a card that usually gets me lots of moans and groans. I currently have 2 Rakdos the Defiler decks. One of them is a competitive 1v1 build. I'll be recording that shortly. Another one is this dicky little, like, it's an altered art deck where the whole deck is altered. It's stupid as shit. But a lot of my opponents remember when I did the competitive Rakdos Defiler deck versus them. I don't play it very much anymore. But hitting them with Rakdos does the same thing as Curse of the Cabal. They sack half of their permanents. Well, I guess Rakdos has the Demon Claws, but either way, it's usually half of their permanents. Being that I can get Jeleva out very quick in this deck, and this may be a very devastating spell to see cast against you on turn 4. Not suspended, but literally just cast against you. That's usually makes you just want to concede. Army of the Damned is the cheesy gimmick, like just the quick win. Where I just, like, if it's the quickest way of winning, I'll just go for it there. Putting out enough power on the board to kill an opponent in 2 turns, it usually does the trick. There it is. This is the 10th spell that lets me cast something from your deck. So there are 10 spells total in the deck that let me play your cards. This one is also good because the reason it's in this stack, there's an exile package here for just getting rid of your deck. One thing Jeleva can't handle too much is getting tucked, and your combos I don't have a way of interacting with. So something like this, if I just can't stop your combos, I can try to at least extract your combos. Same thing, I can pay kicker off this. If I'm doing 1v1, this usually just warrants a concession. Because if I just took every single card out of your deck that actually wins you the game, and I have already maybe messed up your hand a little bit, then there's really no point in continuing. This is bad in multiplayer, although, because you have to pick a target. That usually puts a lot of bad vibrations on you, and you will get repercussions from the other players just because. Same thing, denying win hits 7. It's also very expensive. This one, if kicked, I can get up to 15. This one only hits 7, but I mean, I don't have to pay kicker. Spell Twine, and that's essentially all the offensive spells. Everything else here is more or less a combo tech. Spell Twine lets me cast one more thing from someone's graveyard, so I guess the 11th spell, but also something from mine, which is usually more important. But then it exiles itself. The last reset spell here, these 2 are really good tech to help me reset if I've lost something in my graveyard, or if it's been countered and I need to get back in the deck. Because this one lets me essentially reset my whole deck, and untap my lands and draw. I can cast this off Jeleva, so I can dump a whole bunch of stuff before combat, and then cast this from her and untap and keep on going. And the rest of these are actually extra turn spells. There is a combo in the deck, essentially where I take infinite turns. This one doesn't do it. This usually ends up being an explorer, so I can untap and play an extra land and draw an extra card. That's literally all Temporal Master usually is. Time Warp usually helps me set up to start doing shenanigans with her. Beacons is the combo part. Let's get that out of here. Then we have Time Stretch, which is 2 turns. Again, something very easy to cast off Jeleva. And here's the combo. If you did not see my previous video, I will go ahead and explain how it works here. Off Jeleva, I can cast the spell for free, Enter the Infinite. So I can cast this for free and then put any card I want on top of my deck. Assuming I have enough mana to just cast like a Soul Ring, or maybe if I have enough mana to hard cast the spell itself, I can cast Beacon of Tomorrows, which then puts this spell on top of my deck. There's a few ways. The trick there is making sure if I, for example, put the Miracle one on top of my deck from Enter the Infinite, that I do have enough to actually cast Beacon, because I need this back on top of my deck. If my whole deck's in my hand and I have enough mana to cast Beacon over and over, that means I have infinite turns. I can just keep on taking turns over and over. There is, obviously, like I'm drawing on my ramp, like my Soul Ring and everything with the Enter the Infinite, but there's an enabler that helps me get this, called Dream Halls. There's only 2 enchantments in the deck. There's Dream Halls and then Fervor. Fervor just gives her haste. But Dream Halls is the enabler here. It's not necessary, but it helps. It also usually, when I cast Enter the Infinite, I may not need the extra turns if Dream Halls is out. The cool thing, and Jeleva costs 4, if I have done proper top deck manipulation or tutored, I could get this under her. and literally the first time I declare her as an attacker, I can draw my whole deck. And assuming that I haven't played the land that turn, I can play my 5th land and drop Dream Halls. If that resolves, I win, because I can play my entire deck just like that. What Dream Halls does, it's a 5-mana enchantment. You gotta be careful because it affects all players. Instead of paying the casting cost of a spell of any color, I can choose and discard a card that matches it. So if my whole deck is in my hand, I can discard a card I no longer need. For example, I would no longer need any tutors. I could discard this tutor and cast Time Stretch for free. This, of course, only works at the legal speed of the spell. So I have one single counter spell to keep the safe with. But if the opponents have any instances in their hand, they can try to interact with this while I'm trying to as well. Sometimes it's also fun just to land this, but even before I get any of the shenanigans online, just to see kind of what the opponents do. But yeah, this, again, the Dream Halls is not necessary. It is an enabler to help me do it quicker. With proper accelerant, if I wait to have like maybe 5 mana before I actually do this, I can usually get all my artifacts stuff, drop a land, drop a soul ring, or drop an ancient tomb, drop a soul ring, drop a couple more ramps, and put the temporal mastery on top, something like that. Then I'll be able to untap, take an extra turn, cast the beacon from my hands, and this goes on top of my deck. It is a combo deck, and because of that, I don't like running this too often. The other bad part is Jeleva herself tends to get a lot of bad attention because you are burning cards off of the opponent's deck. Putting a giant stack of your opponent's cards under her on your side of the table, it doesn't matter how well veteran the player is, they're not going to be happy to see that because they are seeing cards that they have themselves lost access to. So Jeleva tends to get a lot of hate, either if you are or are not running a combo. But that entire stack was all spells. Now let's go on to the rest of the permanents. You already saw the 2 enchantments. There's lots of artifacts to help get her out. Well, not a lot. Top deck manipulation. Top is perfect. I like to see exactly what's coming up. If it's not worth casting Jeleva, maybe if something's on top of my deck I don't want to lose under Jeleva, then this is going to help me peel it off. Same thing, Scroll Rack helps me set up for a perfect draw. This is like Brainstorm 2.0 right now. I need Jeleva to die sometimes. If she gets tucked, I essentially lose the game. So I have a few sacrifice outlets. This one's great because I get the mana to help recast her. We have some haste enablers, 2 boots to help get her out. I've been told the most terrifying thing about playing against my deck so far is when I cast this or resolve this really early. Then everything else is ramp. There's lots of ramp here. 2 1-drops to help me, Wayfarer's Bulb helps me fix my colors. Soul Ring is just too powerful. And then I have the 6 2-drops, the 3 signets, and the 3 diamonds. So I can, with this accelerant setup, I can usually consistently turn 3 Jeleva. With the Soul Ring, I can turn 2 her. There is, I believe, an Ancient Tomb, so I've used that to also turn 2 her as well. Let's go ahead and get the rest of this here. These are all the lands. I think I'm down to like 36 or 7 now. But yeah, there's been a few changes since the previous recording here. I'm drawing my whole deck at some point in time where my goal is to, so Reliquary Tower is very important here. Although usually by the time I draw my whole deck, I've already won. Hull of the Bandit Lord is another one of those cards that my opponents absolutely fear seeing early game because it gives her haste. Ancient Tomb goes with Soul Ring, so I can have the potential of casting her on turn 2 if I get good landfalls. And some of these are here just to keep her safe. Riptide Laboratory, she is a vampire wizard. I can bounce her to my hand. I can sack her for 2 black mana, which means I can help recast her. This one's interesting. It does not initially tap for any mana at all, but I can tap it and sack... exile, actually. It says sacrifices and exile. I can exile a creature and put a counter on it. Then it taps for the number of counters. She is the only creature, so I have to actually sack her once before this becomes usable. High Market is there just to sack her. Minimo is there to untap her. This one is not normally useful very much, but sometimes I need her to die. And sometimes I need to be able to cast something, but also have a chump blocker up. So this is very important to be able to untap her if need be. Since she is technically the main win condition of the deck, all the spells do the work, but she does the work to get the spells online. I'm running 2 man lands here, just so I can kind of get some damage off. Very rarely do I need them active, but they're helpful. Then the last colorful guys are Command Tower, and she is something I do not want tucked. Like, I would be very unhappy to have her spell crumpled, so this is here just to keep her safe. And there's the Necropolis. This is, again, something I've been thinking about taking out. I don't like tap lands, but her color requirements are so tight that I think it's still necessary. The rest of these are just the double lands. So I got 3 temples. Scrying is always good to see what's coming up if it's worth casting her. 3 shocks. Come on. 3 pain lands. 3 filter lands. Filter lands are very helpful because most of mine do produce color. So getting her online faster is nice. And the 3 buddy lands. And the rest of these are just basics. I've been working on these basics for a while. Haven't had an actual use for these islands until I decided to put them in her. The big problem here is I am only currently running 1 single mountain. I need to be careful with that. Again, something I don't like telling my opponents because if that may backfire. But yeah, this is Jeleva. Oh, the playmat here is the same artwork on the back of the cards. A friend got me this playmat for Christmas. It was an awkward gift since I haven't talked to her for a long time, but the sleeves match my playmat, so it's pretty clever. I will probably go back to my Axe of Trees and playmat all those shortly. I just prefer it more. But yeah. So Narset may be a strictly... I can't say strictly in this situation because she costs more. This is more of an interactive deck where I play the opponent's cards, and it's more of a spell flinger deck. Narset, from what decks I've seen and played against, they usually just try to go off on infinite turns and kill you immediately with combat effects. So they do play differently, but they essentially do the same thing, just burning free cards off the top of your deck. I don't know which one I like better. I like Grixis, so I'll probably always stick with Jeleva. Narset is a very powerful general, but I also like how quick Jeleva is. It only takes 1 artifact, 2 mana costing artifact for me to get Jeleva out on turn 3, while Narset will be still casting mana accelerants on that turn. But the problem with, of course, Narset is that usually if you don't deal with her accelerants, they're going to win the turn they start swinging. The problem with Jeleva is she gets lots and lots of bad attention from the opponents, because pulling cards off the top of their deck and sticking them on your side of the table, it causes so many bad feelings. Like, even if I actually did an experimental Jeleva deck where I made it a burn deck. I literally put 45 burn spells in a Jeleva deck just to see how it did. I main decked Lava Axe if you need. Like that's literally a deck I designed, and I played it for about a week. It was funny. It did well. I was able to drop some of the Furnace of Wrath effects and hit people for 20 and whatnot. But even that much of a weakened deck, a burn deck and EDH deck, it was pathetically weak. But even then, it still caused lots of unhappy feelings just because she burns cards off people's decks. If your play group is mature, I would suggest giving her a try. If your play group has a very poor threat assessment, I would not suggest Jeleva because they will hate you out of the game. Again, another suggestion, if you do run Jeleva, I know a lot of people like things like the Proteus Staff, things like that to manipulate your deck. It's not really necessary, and you're likely to exile with her. This is more of a glass cannon build. Again, don't suggest to your opponent that you only have 1 creature because you're just asking to get dealt with. But yeah, I always suggest Jeleva. She's super fun. But of course, I'm recording this after New Year's. Any ideas or new cards, definitely let me know.